What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. Today for, wait for it, a collector style video. I know. I might get a reputation. We'll have to be careful, not do too many of these. But what we're doing today, this was inspired by a video from last week that I did where I talked about the last card you would sell in your collection, or the last 5 cards you would sell from your collection if everything, something unfortunate happened, or maybe you just get to the end of the road where you're saying, I'm out. What are the last 5 that you would sell? And I pontificated that question to you boys and girls in the video, and a lot of people left some great comments on that video. And what I found was a lot of people had sentimental choices, which when I sat down to formally do this for myself, I very quickly fell into the same, I don't want to say trap, but into the same mental space where a lot of the things on my list had some sort of story, family tie, historical memory tied to the product as we kind of run through these really quickly. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to run through my 5, kind of show you my list. And then once again, if you missed this when we did it last week, like I said, a lot of people left a lot of great comments. That was on the selling the PC card video when I sold the Jose Ramirez Chief Wahoo patch. I talked about like the last cards in your collection that you were going to let go. So I'm going to go ahead and run through my list. Very curious for what yours are. You don't have to put all 5. You could put the last one that you would sell, whatever it is. But I went with 5. Nice little even number. 4 of these are definitely what you would consider like PC/childhood collection cards. I did include one, and it'll be the first one that I talk about. I did include one from like the Zion case collection, if that makes sense, or the slab collection. It's not even a slab card, but my more modern acquired cards, I guess, that don't have sentimental ties from when I was a little kid. So the first one on the list, and this was actually one that I mentioned in that video. It's the Pedro Pascal Star Wars Stellar Auto. A couple different reasons on this one. I love Pedro Pascal. He is fantastic in The Mandalorian. I really loved him in Game of Thrones. That's where I first kind of ran into his work. I love that character from the books, and he was just exactly what I kind of thought that character would be on the screen. I love Mandalorian as a show. It's absolutely fantastic. It's kind of everything I've wanted Star Wars to be since the original 3. And so those are the reasons that this card makes the list. In addition to that, these are just super rare. It took me probably 3 to 4 months of hunting, maybe even 5 or 6 months. I'd have to check to actually track one of these down. They just do not come up very often. And I almost ended up buying a second one very recently, but held off because I didn't want to tie up that much money, and I actually regret just not buying it when I saw it pop up. But this, if I let this go, it could be a half a year to a year before I see another one pop up. They just don't come up very often, and there's rumors that he's not signing as often anymore either. So demand is probably only going to grow for this, and I just don't know that there's going to be a lot coming to the secondary market as he becomes more and more popular. So that's these are in no particular order, but this is definitely the one from my modern collection, if you will. Let's get in the sentimental ones. This next one is probably the biggest card, at least as a kid, not in the modern. Probably some modern Zion nonsense is the biggest card I've pulled in modern. But as a kid, this is by far and away the biggest card that I opened in terms of value. I remember I bought this pack. I think it was just called the Baseball Card Shop. It was in Hermitage, Pennsylvania on State Street. If anyone's from the Western Pennsylvania area near Sharon, PA, you may or may not remember what I'm talking about. That was my local card shop beyond flea markets and stuff when I was a kid. The great part was the plaza that it was in, the plaza across the street, is where my mom took me to get my haircut as a little kid. So, every few weeks when I would go for a haircut, I always had an opportunity to go to the card shop. I remember I bought this pack there. This would have been in the, mid to late 90s, 95, 96, 97. up until, you know, the 2000s was when I was really back in the sports cards pretty hardcore. I would have been, let's see, this is a card from 1997, I believe. Yeah, so I'd have been 15, 16 years old, depending on when this came out. And it is an SP Authentic. And the crazy thing about this card is it was a redemption. So I pulled this as redemption. And I remember having to mail it off and then getting the card back in the mail. SP Authentic Tony Gonzalez rookie auto. Sign of the times. Auto's not fantastic. It's probably a 9 auto. This card's actually pretty beat up. I've had it in the top loader my entire life, but I remember when I got it, it was already a little dinged up. You could see that corner's really messed up. And then the SP logo on the back was really chipped off. I remember it being like that when I got it in the mail from Upper Deck. But this is a card I would probably, like I said, obviously it's on the list. I would never really let go. I've actually, Paul actually offered one of this card off me when I showed it one time on a stream. I told him I just couldn't let it go. But yeah, Tony Gonzalez, rookie auto. At the time, you know, when I pulled it, I was like, a tight end from the Chiefs? Seriously? You know, little did I know he would go on to have a Hall of Fame career. But this was definitely the biggest card I ever pulled out of a pack as a kid, and it was a redemption. And I remember thinking as a kid, I'm like, what? Wait, I gotta mail this off to get a card back? What is happening right now? So really cool card there. Auto looks pretty good. The T's a little streaky. Other than that, it's not too bad. Like I said, I've had this in a top loader since I was a kid. Next up, Dale Earnhardt Assets, whatever set this is. And you're probably wondering what makes this card so special. I went on a little kick where I sent cards off to athletes with self-addressed stamped envelopes. And I sent this, I'd heard, and I was a big NASCAR kid. My grandpa, huge NASCAR guy. And we would always watch races together on Sunday. He still watches them to this day. He still complains about them all the time. But big NASCAR family on my grandpa's side. And I had heard that NASCAR drivers were really good about signing. So I looked around and I had a couple Dale Earnhardt cards laying around, and I sent this one off. And it was months went by, like 6-8 months went by. And I got this back. And you could see on the back a Dale Earnhardt signature. Now, I have no idea if he signed this, his secretary signed this. I really don't know. It looks pretty on point to some of the signatures that I've seen. I am no signature guy, so I could be completely wrong. So maybe this is a secretary signature. I have no idea. But I just thought it was really cool that I sent this off and then ended up getting it back as a kid. I guess I was a little bit older. This card came out in 96. I was probably 15 or 16 once again when I sent this off. The only bad part is, you know, even if it is a legit sig, is that he signed it on the back and not on the front of the card. If he signed it on the front, that would be a killer auto on this. I've always hemmed and hawed about sending this in to PSA to have it authenticated. But I think part of me, there's like a 3% of me that's scared that it's not real. And I just don't want my childhood dream to get crushed that his secretary signed this and not him. And I never have plans on selling this. So it's not like I'm super concerned about the legitimacy of it or not. But it has filtered in the back of my mind to send this off to PSA and see if they would off the auto. It's pretty hard to see because it just, like, there's a lot going on the back of the card. It's a little streaky with the blue Sharpie. You can see how it streaked a little bit there, like right in here. But yeah, I mailed this off to Dale Earnhardt with a self-addressed stamped envelope and got it back as probably a 15, 16-year-old kid. I was never technically a really big Earnhardt guy back in 90s NASCAR. I was a big Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin fan back in the day. I was a fan of Earnhardt Jr. For sure when he raced. Never a Jeff Gordon guy either, but always respected Earnhardt, the Intimidator, I would actually like a legit Earnhardt auto. I know Flipping Steve has a couple. I actually almost picked one up at the National. So that is that one. That's 3. The next one is 2 cards in 1. I'm going to cheat a little bit here for number 4, and we're going to do the same thing for number 5. The next 2 are a 1990 Fleer, Sammy Sosa, and Ken Griffey Jr. And you might ask, what the hell, why is this on the list? These 2 cards, my best friend and I, from school, from high school, he's best man at my wedding, decided one day, we saw this ad for PSA in the back of Beckett about getting cards graded and how it increased value and this, that, and the other thing. I think it was Beckett. I don't remember where. It might have been Tough Stuff, wherever. And we decided to send these in. So these are my PSA submissions from when I was a little kid. I remember sending it off and paying whatever it was to get them graded, and they were gone for months at a time. And then they came back as 9s. Obviously, we had no idea what we were doing. Actually, it looked pretty clean. Sosa's off-centered for sure. The Griffey doesn't look terrible centering-wise. See, look, PSA was bad back then, too. Just kidding. Just kidding. Jokes. Relax. But we got the old school PSA label on there. So just a fun one. Like, once again, you know, last one to sell in air quotes. You know, the value on these would be like $20. If I'm selling these, then I'm in pretty big trouble. Even had a hologram way back then. So I'm trying to think when I would have sent these in. I'm guessing I could check the submission date probably by looking up the cert number when it was graded. Probably, I'm going to guess late 90s I submitted these, if I had to guess. I think I sent these in the late 90s. Probably like my junior year of high school, if I was willing to wager. Sophomore, junior year of high school, if I had to bet. I should look up the cert numbers to see, but I don't want to do that during the video. So this is number 4, is this pair, because these went off together, and I always keep them together wherever they are. The last one is, once again, kind of a combo, and I don't have it to show because it just takes up too much space. It is my original set of 1991 and 1990 Marvel Universe. So that's Series 2 and Series 1. I still have my hand-collated sets that I put together as a kid. 91 MU which is Series 2, is actually the set I came to first. That was kind of my gateway drug into Marvel cards, comic books, that whole path. Really, my gateway was the cartoon Pride of the X-Men. And then I saw on the side of the box for 91 Marvel Universe at Southside Market. Once again, that was in Brookfield, Ohio, but right on the border of Brookfield and Pennsylvania, and Sharon, Pennsylvania. Hermitage, Pennsylvania, for anyone from that neck of the woods. Southside Market, Brookfield, Ohio, walking through the checkout aisle and saw the side of the box for 91 MU, and it had Cyclops on there. And this was like, I would have been 10 years old. My brain connected that to when I saw Pride of the X-Men, the one-off cartoon from the mid to late 90s. And I loved that thing. I didn't know what it was, but I just knew that I loved it. It was an old X-Men. It was a one-off pilot in the same animation style as G.I. Joe and Transformers. A lot of the same voice actors. It's terrible. It's 23 minutes. It's a one-off. It never got, like, you know, picked up to go forward. But 8-year-old me, or however old I was when I saw that, that stuck with me, not knowing what really comic books were or Marvel characters were. Long story short, saw that box, begged my mom to buy packs, bought packs, immediately fell in love with it. Like, just hooked, 10 years old and falling into 91 Marvel Universe, hook, line, and sinker. At the time, my grandfather and I would go to flea markets all summer long. We would go to flea markets all over the Northeast Ohio region, mostly Rogers Flea Market and some other smaller ones. And cards and comics were huge at flea markets back then in the early 90s. This is the peak of the junk wax era. And I built a set. You know, I would go around, and the guys at the flea markets would have the long boxes with all the singles. The local baseball card shop in Hubbard, Ohio, had boxes as well as singles. So I would go in there and I would put the set together. And I knew I knew the entire set, exactly what I had and exactly what I needed, all in my head. Then, you know, you're a kid, you don't have the internet, you don't know any better. I stumbled into the fact that there was a 90 Marvel MU. Put that set together immediately. As soon as I finished the 91 set, deep dove into the 90 set and loved that set. So 91 set was actually like my first real introduction. I really fell hard for the 90 set. I just love the images. I love the way the cards looked compared to 91. And then shortly after that, 92 X-Men came out. And that was like, you know, I was all in at that point in time by the time Jim Lee X-Men came out in 92. But 91 Marvel Universe and 90 Marvel Universe set me down a path then in the comic. Then I started buying comic books. My first comic books that I ever bought were the Jim Lee X-Men run. X-Men #1, Blue Team, Gold Team during the split, Uncanny X-Men 282. All that came out all at the same time all this was happening, which was like from a time to literally say I'm going to go buy my first X-Men comic book off the spinner rack, and it's the same month that Jim Lee X-Men #1 hits. And, you know, the first appearance of Bishop comes out, and like there's that team split and kind of like a soft reset for someone walking in. And that artwork, I literally could not have picked a more perfect time to discover that world. But those 90 and 91 sets, I would never let go. They are probably two of my most cherished collectible possessions, just from the fact of the path that it set me down with a love for that Marvel universe, and also the memories of my grandpa taking me around. And like, I'm lucky I still have him with me, but the memories of him taking me around to the flea markets, my mom taking me to the card shops, and piecing these sets together and just sitting for hours and organizing them in binder pages and flipping through and reading the backs of the cards and the power levels and comparing everything. The amount of time I spent with those two sets as a kid was absolutely insane. So those, if these were in a numbered order, those would be the absolute last thing I would let go. And I still actually have them in my original binders. Like I said, I didn't want to dig them out. It's hard to display on the tabletop. And I have since put together second versions of those sets. When I ripped 91 and 90 MU and even 92 Jim Lee X-Men, I have put together like mint versions of those sets because my sets were beat to hell from a kid. But I still have all my original Marvel Universe sets. Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, 92 Jim Lee X-Men, Fleer Ultra X-Men, a couple other ones that I put together. I went probably on a 5-year run pretty hard on Marvel cards there. And then kind of fell out of it as I got a little bit older and shifted back into sports cards then. You know, the early to mid 90s was my comic book / Marvel time. And then that led me back in the sports cards again. I collected sports cards as a very little kid in the 80s, and then transitioned into the Marvel stuff, and then transitioned back into sports cards, and then transitioned into Magic the Gathering actually to kind of close things out. So those are my 5. Curious for if you didn't comment on the previous video on what either, you know, if you don't have 5, whatever, you know, your last one is, leave it in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed story time, and this is a little different content than what you typically see on the channel. But since I made that video and read all those comments, this has been gnawing at me to put this together. Have a fantastic day, everyone. We will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.